bulking out a little bit. No, it is a female. She's just got a growth on her belly. Actually, I don't know what that is. It's some kind of, probably one of those benign cysts or benign tumors. Just on the bulge of her stomach there. The one's about a year old or so. Maybe just a little bit younger. What's up, cows? You're suddenly looking around like you've spotted something. Or maybe just that they've realized they're slowly being left behind by the rest of the herd. And keep your eyes peeled on the Djuma Dam camera, because it looks like they're on their way to drink at that water hole. Here we go. You can see what I mean by us having been surrounded. Here's the dam. Okay, I think it's time to loop around again and see how they manage to work their way to all drink at what is a very, very small area of water. Let's go down and see. Ooh, that looked very spiky. It's amazing how much more nervous you feel when you don't have a spare tire. Them all. This is incredible. Oh, found a hole. Which way are you going, Buffalo? You're gonna go down to the pump hole? Last station, if you copy me. Radio's not working properly. I can't hear your updates. And they go. Look at them all. As I said, there's not much in the way of room here, so there's going to be a little bit of conflict. There's still more to go. They're all trying to push their way in. Somebody's just trying to get through on the Game Drive channel and their radio is not working very well at all. Oh, listen to the sound of them all pushing their way in there. Somebody's very grumpy. it's, as I said, it is actually quite small. I don't think it even reaches 100. Can't even imagine what it would be like if those big herds of 400 or 500 that we sometimes see came to try and push their way in here. Our last station, just to let you know, I do not copy you. There we go. I've almost seemed to settle down. All resting quite happily in the water. Surprisingly with very little fuss. It was kind of like the ones on the outskirts accepted that they were at the back and they're just going to have to wait their turn to have a chance to lie in the water. There's a bit of pushing and shoving. But look at all those heads in the water. Good afternoon, James. Hello. Look at that head poking out. Look at the one sleeping with its head on there, all resting their heads on each other. Oh. Copy that. Thanks very much, James. It's very interesting to see how they resolve this. Ooh. They're looking quite content. It doesn't look very pleasant to me. But obviously on a hot day like today, you take what you can get. I wonder how this will play itself out, this situation. If some of them will lie there for a while or if they'll get up and give the others a chance. I doubt it. I think they're going to quite happily stick around. Oh, there's a bit of pushing there. You hear them all wading and shuffling around in the mud. Oh, shame, there's a tiny little calf there at the back. I don't know if we can see it from Brian's perspective. I'm just trying to look to see. I don't think so. It's going to come in through your screen there. There it goes. Behind the buffalo's head and up the other side. Shame. Imagine being that tiny in a crush full of buffalo like this. In slippery mud. Must be quite a struggle. Well done, baby. You did well in there. Looking very contented. The female to the left and then those two big bossed males to her right. Hello, buffalo. Mooing in distaste. Oh, somebody's very cross. It could be that's a mom trying to call her calf. I'm just trying to work out which one of them is making that moo. quite often in situations like this, they do get separated. You can imagine in that rush down to the water and all that excitement, just look at all of those bodies moving around. Must be quite difficult to keep track. But I'm definitely enjoying this. I haven't seen a nice big buffalo herd in a while. She's been rubbing her head in the mud. And as warm as it is, I'm definitely not tempted to go and join them. I was thinking earlier about how warm it is and whether or not dip in the muddy waterhole would be ideal, but sitting next to them now and getting the scent of buffalo washing over me, as well as watching lots of them defecate in the water and urinate in the water, well, Dylan, it definitely smells like a cattle farm. It's very much a cow smell. If you ever get to smell it, you'd be very familiar with it if you've been around cattle before. Buffalo smell quite similar. It's slightly more earthy and slightly more muddy. And now it's also combined with the scent that I find quite unique to the dams around here. It's a sort of a wet clay mud smell. I don't know how else to describe it. Some of them are still reluctant to move anywhere. There's one buffalo at the back there. Where is he gone? Oh, it's hard to keep track of them. It's like trying to count them as well. It's just constantly moving. Dylan, you were wondering how many I think there might be. I think about 100 or so. It's not the biggest buffalo herd I've seen, maybe about 150. There was one with quite a fresh injury on the back of its leg, but I've completely lost track of it. It's disappeared. And it almost looked as though it was something that was acquired in the last few moments of this frantic rush to the waterhole. And desperately escaping off to the side is a really irritated terrapin. And I don't think he was expecting his afternoon to be invaded by smelly neighbors who've just unannounced plopped themselves in his waterhole. He must be terribly disgruntled and quite relieved that he wasn't squashed in any way. Well done. It's a little hinged terrapin. And mooing at something. I always take these opportunities whenever there's a buffalo herd to try and look for one of the yellow-billed oxpeckers. There don't seem to be any at the moment. You typically see the red-billed. Can't see any now to point out to you, but I'm desperately looking to see. I think they've all been chased off by the sudden entry into that water and mud. Now, if this is the same buffalo herd that came from Hoffman's and around that area, that is where the Styx females were hanging out, as far as I know. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's some lions moving around after this buffalo herd tonight sometime. We're going to have to keep close track of what they're up to. A couple of oxpeckers fluttering back. I did see a buffalo with quite a badly injured leg. Brian, I don't know if you can see it anymore. I can't from where I am, or at least from my angle. We'll keep an eye peeled though, because as I said, it could be that they were the ones that they had an encounter with lions last night, or it could have been something that was because it is red and dripping, it's freshly bleeding. Could be something that was caused during their impact into the water. That poor terrapin. As if being displaced was not good enough, now he's got the indignity of being sniffed by a curious buffalo. I hope it leaves it alone. Buffalo have been known to be quite ill-tempered, but I think in this case he's just curious and giving it a bit of a sniff. Not quite sure what this thing is. Don't step on him. Poor terrapin. Oh, terrapin, don't go that way. That's where the rest of the herd is. Shame. Alright, but back to this injured buffalo. I did see it earlier. I'm struggling to see it now. You can see how the... You got it?
It's back there, you can't see it right.
Okay. Alright, we'll keep an eye out for it. Brian says he spotted it, but we'll have to shift around to see it. As you can see, the crush for the waterhole has diminished slightly.
Yep.
You got him. Well done. Oh. Okay, this is a different one that I was looking at. The one I looked at had an injury on the back of its leg. This one on its back leg. This one's got it on its front leg. And that's looking really quite raw and painful. I've shifted cars around so my binoculars are tucked in my backpack. So get them out, you know, that's not what I wanted. It does look quite raw and quite fresh and bleeding, and the oxpeckers are definitely not helping matters. They're targeting that particular area. That's because they don't only eat ticks, they also eat blood and mucus. Sure. That was a very interesting sighting. I'll try and get close in position to that buffalo. I think they're going to keep shuffling away from me. It will heal up. It's not too serious from what I can see. It just looks worse than it is. Well, it's been an exciting buffalo sighting that we've shared here at the waterhole. I want to follow up on the terrapin and see what's happened to him as well as that injured buffalo. And in the meantime, I believe that Mr. Henry is out and about. So let's head across and see what he's looking at a different waterhole, and I'll catch up with you a little bit later.
Hello everybody, welcome to Jigger. Sorry about my tardiness today, I was a little bit delayed getting out, but never mind, here we are. Marvellous, beautiful Kruger National Park. My name is James Henry, the radio is exploding in my ear, so I'm just going to turn it down a little. Oh, Viam and I are going crazy. Viam is on camera today. Hello Viam. And you, of course, are behind your computer screens and televisions and various other sources of media through which you view this very live safari. And you're most welcome. We love to hear from you. Please ask us questions. Send us your comments. Hashtag Safari Live or questions at wildearth.tv. Now, over the other side of me is the reason that we took you away from those buffalo. Not that that giraffe isn't reason enough, but there is an expired catfish there next to a puddle of less than expired catfish, and you can see them bopping around. There was a fish eagle here eating that when we arrived, but he flew off. He seems to have had enough. And then the intestines, quite interestingly, were set upon by a number of starlings, and then the butterflies are all there are a couple of these sort of beautiful peppermint green butterflies, probably some kind of bordered white, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not really sure exactly which butterflies they are, but there are lots of beautiful ones knocking about here in the mud. I'm not entirely sure what they're doing in the mud. They're probably having a bit of a drink, to be honest. It is a pretty hot day. There you can see some of them lovely sort of mint-coloured butterflies with little bits of brown border on them. Stunning. I just don't think they're collecting mud. I can't imagine why they would be collecting any kind of mud. Anyway, that's what's going on here at Treehouse Dam. I'm just going to try and find you a picture of this butterfly that I think this is one of. Sorry, actually an African migrant. There I am in picture again. Thank you, Via. I think it looks probably something like that, an African migrant, and they're often mainly white, but they can be yellow or tan, sometimes a little bit green, so maybe an African migrant, but I might be entirely wrong. If you have a better idea as to what butterflies those are, I'd be very interested to hear. Anyway, we're back to exactly the same sort of stage that we were a little while back, where the catfish were in a state of profound discomfort as they bobbled around in those boiling kind of mud wallows. And what we discovered, of course, was that when it gets really dry, and I think it is still going to get pretty dry, those catfish manage to make a mucus film around their bodies. They go under the mud, and they can survive with sort of very thin breathing holes that go up to the surface until conditions are more favorable. The other thing about those catfish is that they are the biggest of the big, and that means that not a lot can really eat them. The fish eagles can come and take them, but the storks and other things like that that might eat catfish are just, they don't pick them apart like an eagle does. They would normally swallow them whole, and those catfish are much too big to be swallowed whole. I would go and get you the head, but I would sink deeply into the mud, and while that might amuse you hugely, it would probably not amuse me a great deal. Right, so our plan, other than this for this afternoon, is to head around towards where there were some lion tracks this morning. We'll see what happens. We're also hoping that there will probably be, or we're hoping to find some leopard tracks. Of course, the sad news of Sindile's departure from the show is obviously, it was met with great heartsore by me, but he's okay wherever he is now. And I'm very sad to say that we'll be looking for Shadow on her own now on the western side of the reserve. She might be pregnant, of course, which is greatly exciting. She was seen mating very nicely recently. Okay, so while we leave, we're going to link across to Scott. He is on foot with Steph and Brent, I think. I'm not sure who he's with, actually, and Gendre is filming him. So we're going to nip across to Scott, see what he's found, and hopefully I will see you with some good news a little bit later. Hello everybody, welcome back. Sorry about that, that is very distressing for for old Scott. No audio, so I'm afraid that's why you've come back to watch my ugly mug drive the wonders of this marvellous reserve. I must say it's been so very pleasant to be back in the heat, first of all. It hasn't been that hot today. I think it was a lot hotter yesterday. Right, Viam? Yes. Yesterday was absolutely boiling. Yes, Viam, in fact, he went pale at the mere mention of yesterday. So I think it was a lot hotter yesterday. It's a very sort of pleasant, probably 32-ish about now. And I just love it when the sun starts to sink gently into the sky and this gold, this not golden, this green just starts to shine. Wonderful low-angled light. Beautiful. So we're on our way to see if we can find some leopard tracks. Haven't found any as yet, of course. I haven't gone very far from Twin Dams. We might be lucky. One lives in hope. And lots of flowers, of course, around. And I know that Brent is a big flower fan, and I'm sure he's been showing you a few of the flowers. I'm not particularly good on the flowers, but I do like the look of them. So we'll see what we can find on our travels. Seen some strings of stars, some pretty blue ones and some pretty yellow ones. I'm really also hoping to see a gardenia. Remember, I don't know if you remember, but I did tell some of you about a gardenia tree, and they flower for only about a week, and the most glorious smelling white flowers that then disintegrate very quickly after they've come up. Possibly a bit later in the season. There's some impalas there. No, it's not some impala. Yes, it is. I'm not going mad. It's very exciting. They're in there. Promise you. There they are. Can you see them? It's not a particularly good sighting, everybody, I'm afraid, because the bush is quite thick in here. But oh, there's some better ones, Viampy. There we go. And a steenbok. Look at that, mixed herd. Can you see the steenbok, Viam? There we go. Little steenbok, pretending to be a baby impala so that it can derive... oh no, look at that. Do you see that? Mm-hmm. So that young impala is now chasing the steenbok off. I suspect that's just simply a young male sort of probably starting to develop a bit of testosterone and testing himself out a bit. Bit of a bully, of course. Steenbok, not much of a challenge for a impala. Marvellous. Right. On we go. Little Gracie, aged 8 in Ohio. Thank you for your kind welcome back. It's very nice to be back, Gracie. You want to know if I've got any stories to tell you? Well, Gracie, I'll tell you one story that happened to me while we're driving along. I was in England, of course, and in England, it's supposed to be pretty easy to get around. It was not big like this. It's not what we call big sky country, where the sky is huge like it is here. And I was sent off one day in the countryside on a horse. And they said to me, "You won't get lost. You're from Africa. You'll be fine." Well, I got very lost, Gracie. I got very lost indeed. and there were a number of people out looking for me, thinking that I'd perhaps fallen off. They thought I'd absconded and stolen the horse or something like that. Anyway, I managed to get back after 2 hours. The horse was pretty tired, I was pretty sore, and we thought that would be that. And then 2 days later I went riding again, the same horse, in a similar area, and lo and behold I got lost again. So I didn't really cover myself in much glory there, Gracie, but I eventually managed to find my way back, and eventually, thankfully, didn't have to navigate the plane back to Africa. That was done for me by the pilots of Kenya Airways, and here I am. So that's one of the stories from my holiday, Gracie. The other thing that, of course, the summer will bring is a little bit in the way of fruit, which is always, it's such a rare privilege to be able to pick fruit in an area and just eat it. And I was reminded of this again while I was in England. All of the blackberries along the hedgerows are coming into fruit. And so you can go and get lost on foot or on horseback, as I did, and not worry about sustenance, because their hedge is full of delicious tasting blackberries. And that was so nice just to be able to stop, pick a fruit and eat it. And it reminded me of marula season here in February and January, and in fact probably up further north around December time, when you can collect the fruit and eat it, and it's just so delicious to be able to pick something off the ground and eat it and feel sustained. I think it's a rare pleasure that, oh, look at that Steenbok who thinks he's so clever. You got him. That Steenbok thinks it's the cleverest Steenbok in the world, but it isn't. Hello, Steenbok. And it's behaving precisely for the name that it was given. Now, Steen, of course, means stone, and it's not named stone for its colour. It's named stone for its method of defence, which is precisely what it's doing now. It's lying there like a stone, and you can see actually quite nicely that it does look quite stone-like. Wouldn't you say, Viam? Oh. Stonish with a head and ears and a nose and chewing, of course, and horns, and shaking and attracting flies. No, it's moving like that. That's quite interesting. I think it's just panting, actually. It's quite hot. That's a really nice picture, actually. You can see how easy it would be to miss that little Steenbok lying there. I also suspect that it's reluctant to run off because of the heat. Now, it brings up another interesting discussion while we drive along and leave it in peace, and that has to do with size. Now, size is a crucial thing out here, not only because it means you can defend yourself, but the smaller you are, the more likely it is that, or the easier it is for your body to heat up. You can lose heat more quickly when the ambient temperature cools, but if it's very hot, you pick up temperature very quickly. So for a little thing like that, heat balance is not an easy thing. Same with something like a bush baby, and I suspect that's quite often why they're active at night. It's often in an area like this where it doesn't really get very cold. It's easier to lose heat. At least it's easier to gain heat through activity than it is to lose it. There's a little warthog up ahead, which is quite nice. I'm just going to drive very slowly up. They tend to be extremely skittish in these parts. Hello, Warty. Don't run away. There we go. Lovely. Beautiful warthog. Looks like a young sow, if I'm not mistaken. Is it a sow, or a young boar? It is a young sow. So I don't know why she's on her own. No, there's another one there, Viam. Off to the right-hand side. So she's not on her own. She's with another, what looks like another sow. Yeah. Is it? how many sets of warts. From the front, everybody, if you look at the head of a warthog, you can see if it's a sow or a boar by the number of warts it has. So that one looks like it's only got one pair of warts and is therefore... No? Yes, it is. One pair of warts, a female. I'm glad I was correct there. That's probably the mother. You can see she's got much longer teats, and I suspect that's just her daughter. And that's exactly how a sounder forms. An adult sow, possibly with a related daughter or cousin or sister or aunt, and they'll hang around together and produce some babies, and that will eventually form the basis of the sounder. And they are now hiding behind their termite mound, so we shall press along. Right, what we are going to do now while we carry on is head across to Scott, hoping that his dulcet voice, deep baritone that he has, is now going to transfer to you over the interwebs, and so we'll head across to him and see what he's found, and I'll see you a bit later.
Welcome back, everyone, and hopefully you can hear me this time around. What I was actually explaining during my first intro, which you could hear nothing about, was that we are experiencing quite a few difficulties with fine-tuning this bushwalk, and Jandre, who's the cameraman, has got a big backpack with all kinds of equipment strapped onto it and antenna poles sticking up. So it's a miracle in itself that you can't even see a picture, let alone hear us. And bear with us with the small technical difficulties as we take you guys on a bushwalk. It's so exciting, and without further ado, let's continue. There were actually a pride of lion, I'm not sure which ones, that were hunting through this area last night. And we've seen one or two of their tracks on these sandy trails, and it shows that they were actually hunting zebra. And I'm certainly very happy that I am not a zebra, or I wasn't one last night in this thick area, because there would have been lots of cover for the lion to use to sneak up and try and pounce on them. Now, I've got a little bag in my hand, and it's actually a sock, really. And as I go like this, you'll get to see that the wind is blowing straight away from us. And it's important just for me to explain a little bit, especially if it is some of your first bushwalks in Africa, that yes, it is dangerous, but we are trained at what we're doing here. I've spent a lot of time on foot in Africa, and we do know how to avoid getting ourselves into dangerous situations. That's not the aim of these walks. The aim is to hopefully find dangerous animals, but leave before they even know that we're around, and call either Jamie or James in with the vehicle to take a closer look. So we don't want to get into any dangerous situations, but we do want to get to show you some of the smaller things that you simply cannot see from the vehicle. And this sock filled with ash from our campfire is one of the most effective tools you can use when walking in the bush, because it allows you to know which way the wind is blowing. In this case, it's blowing in the same direction that we're heading. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because as we move through the bush, the animals that are ahead of us are going to know that we are coming before they can even see us or hear us. And that's not a bad thing, because it means that we are not going to startle them. And it's animals that get a big fright that are animals that become scared and make a decision either to run away or to run towards you. Thankfully, most of the time animals will run away, even the most big and dangerous of animals, lion, elephant, buffalo, will most of the time run away from us. But sometimes if they do decide to charge, again, our brain power allows us to decide to stand the ground. And by standing your ground, what you're doing is you're telling that animal that you feel confident and positive. As soon as you start to run, immediately that animal is going to start thinking, oh, well, I've got this. The person's running away, I'm going to keep chasing it. Whereas if you stand your ground, you make them think twice, and most of the time they will stop. Just going to open up a little pathway for Jandre and his backpack to squeeze through. No problem. Good. You can hear a black-headed oriole calling around us. And it's really invigorating being on foot, because you get to really heighten your senses. your sense of smell, your hearing, and your eyeballs all of a sudden become very in tune with what's around you. And understandably so, even though there's a small chance of running into trouble with animals, even if a little francolin rustles in the grass next to you, you stop and look and listen just to make sure it isn't something a bit more dangerous with bigger, sharper teeth. Oh, cool. But like I said earlier, you get to see a lot of smaller things. And I'm just going to stop here and I'm going to pick up a handful of old nuts. And there's even more. This is just a few that came from this little pile. And I'm actually not too sure who is responsible for feeding on these. But these are the old nuts and seeds from a marula tree. So around this hard shell would have been a fruit of about 3 millimeters in diameter to 4 millimeters, or in thickness rather, so it creates a kind of a golf ball sized fruit. And within this hard nut or seed is a delicious, very rich and oily nut. But it's so hard to get to that humans don't really consume it as much as we should, although the local people of this area will feed a lot on the very tasty and highly oily, nutritious nut within this. Kind of like a macadamia nut is one that I can relate it to. But I think it could have been a smaller kind of animal that may have been able to slowly bore into these chambers to get at the fruits. I don't think it was a squirrel. What the squirrels will do is, I'm just going to use this one as the example, is they've got these tiny little caps over here that I'm just going to break out. Oh, I just shot the camera. Sorry about that, guys, if that got you in the eye. And you see within that tiny hole there, that's where the fruit or the seed lives that you can feed on, the nuts. And this is usually what the squirrels will pry open with their teeth to get to this nut within inside there. But in this case, it's something else that has been feeding on the nuts. And there's this whole pile over here down on the ground showing that something has had an almighty feast in this area. So again, an awesome thing that we get to see when on foot, these smaller little details. And sadly, I don't know who it was responsible for feeding on the nuts, but nice to know somebody had a good time there. And before we go anywhere further, we're going to have to lower down again. Now I'm in tune with the finer details around us. And this is a pile of dung. Okay, this is how it would have looked when it came out. This whole patch would have looked like this hard shell over here. But now you can see it's almost been combed and fluffed up like it's been at a hairdresser. And the hairdresser responsible for this are dung beetles, which are not very common at the moment. We've seen one or two. I've actually only managed to show you one rolling their big bolus of dung around. But the great thing about them is that they are going to be more and more plentiful, and they make for great viewing. They'll fly into this general area. Most of them fly, some don't. And when they get about to 30 centimeters above the pile of dung, they'll close their flying gear and tumble down to the ground, and then wander up and dig through this dung, making a very tight ball that often the female will latch onto and the male rolls off into the sunset. And that's what's happened here. So some dung beetles made the most of this dropping. It'll be difficult for them to process this dung now because it's very hard. I'm pushing hard with my finger, and you can see it's hard to break up. That's why they like fresh dung that's more workable. And this is the dung of a Cape buffalo. It's entirely made up of grass, just like a cow. That's all they're interested in feeding on. And it's been quite well digested because they've got a 4-chambered stomach. They manage to get a lot of the nutrients out of the vegetation that they feed on. And it smells just like a hay bale, really. So, not disgusting. Don't be alarmed. Good. Now, it's important just to get back to basics and become aware of your surroundings again. So I'm just going to check what the wind's doing, because you can quite easily get so caught up in the smaller things that you can turn around and there could be an elephant or bull watching you, which is a reality that we need to be aware of. Oh, well, the good news is that we are going to be able to continue our walk, but sadly we are going to have to send you back to Jamie. The good news is that she has got the animals that were responsible for that pile of dung that we've just been looking at. Hopefully we'll find you some more interesting things to look at, but enjoy being back on the vehicle with her.
And yes, indeed, we are still sitting with those dung-producing buffalo. I'm sure the dung beetles are going to be having a field day coming round after to clean up, do a clean-up job as the herd moves through. They actually leave a surprisingly small amount of dung for the number of animals that we're seeing. That's because they're ruminants, so their digestive system is much more efficient than something like an elephant. So an elephant digests his food and excretes about half of what they consume during the day. A buffalo, it will probably be more like a quarter of what they consume during the day. So much more energy efficient. And sometimes that even includes part of a tree that the elephants have pushed over. Like this particular buffalo. Interesting, if you read the textbooks, they are strict grazers. And yet here he stands munching on a tree, quite happily. Just as a quick follow-up, I did try and find the terrapin again. I was quite concerned for its safety, but I think it managed to be next to a knobthorn, where it was less like accidentally stomped and intentionally sniffed. I imagine wherever it is now, it's sitting feeling highly disgruntled and probably a little bit like its personal space was definitely infringed upon. He's just keeping a close eye on us. Trisha, who is watching all the way from Canada, she's picked up on the fact, or thinks that she's noticed oxpeckers that look to be different sizes, and was wondering whether or not there's any differences in size, in terms of size and shape, or anything like that in terms of species. And the answer, Trisha, is generally not. Most of the oxpeckers we're seeing, of course, they've all disappeared just because they feel like it. There were a lot of them around earlier, but most of the oxpeckers, 95% or 99% of the oxpeckers we're seeing are red-billed oxpeckers. What you might be seeing is, if you see one with a black beak, then that is a juvenile oxpecker. But for the most part, there's not a huge size difference between them. It might be that some of them, maybe the males are slightly bigger than the females. I wasn't aware of that, but that is one possibility. I'm just having a look quickly to see if there's any kind of difference, but I can't remember how the alphabet works in terms of looking up my index. There we go, got there eventually. Now, if we did see a yellow-billed oxpecker, which would see me getting very, very excited, because they've only just recently come back from the brink of extinction and been saved from the brink of extinction, and slowly increasing in population. It is a little bit larger than the red-billed, but I haven't seen any yet, and it's quite, obviously, given that it's called a yellow-billed oxpecker, it's quite distinctive. Nope, the males and females are pretty much the same in terms of size. So Trisha, I'm not sure. It could be that you're picking up on a juvenile versus an adult, but then they have a very dark coloured beak. Also must be quite difficult to get the idea of scale, especially when we've got so many animals wandering around, and in this case munching on at the base of a termite mound. One of them's acquired a piece of grass on his shoulder, or a piece of tree maybe, that's perfectly balanced right in the middle there. It's like an accessory. Very pretty buffalo. Just a little spot of green on the shoulder. Now we've noticed that lots of them have got bald patches. Maybe he's got one there that he's trying to, or she's trying to cover up, like the equivalent of a comb over. Oof, and they've definitely brought with them not only significant piles of dung, but they've brought the flies along as well. And it's hot, dry and dusty. They're not really moving with much in the way of purpose. I think they're slowly making their way up onto quarantine. But they don't seem to be in any particular rush to do so. They move a little bit, then stop and have a quick nap, and then carry on. It was interesting to watch the level of bonding between the group of them. Oh. A little bit of a scuffle. Nothing too serious. Now, I think it's time to leave these buffalo and to continue on my way before they get up onto quarantine. I just want to do a quick loop and see if there's any signs of lions following behind them. And whilst I do that, I believe that James has a gloriously beautiful bird to show you and a subject of much contention between us. Let's head across to him now, and I'll catch up with you a little bit later.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Jigger. There in the top left hand corner of your screen you see a black lilac-breasted roller, not black in fact, but silhouetted against what is a fairly beating but very beautiful African sun. We've come up to Impala Plains to see if we can find some tracks of a leopard. We did bump into the inimitable Brent Leo Smith, who was sitting with his feet up on the Mahindra. It looked like quite a comfortable place to be underneath a torchwood tree, and he said that the lion tracks from this morning actually crossed south out of Djuma, which is in fair keeping with the general cat luck that's been going on here of late. Now, we are still hoping to find something in the way of Shadow's tracks. I'd like to see her, to commiserate with her. We went past one of Sindile's old haunts. Viam and I had a quiet cry to ourselves, and then we hugged, and now we feel a lot better. And so we're going to carry on and see if we can't find his mother's tracks, and if not, head off towards Buffels Hook Waterhole in the far east. That is the general plan. Please feel free to yak to me at any stage. Hashtag Safari Live. If you're tweeting like that Cokie Franklin you heard going quack, 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 quack. Or questions at wildearth.tv if you're on the email. without losing us there briefly. Now, this is of course completely unrelated to the game drive, but Heidi, you asked the question, wherefore art my little pink hat? Now, there are two aspects to that question that are interesting, Heidi. The first, of course, is that I was wearing a little red hat, or pinkish hat, and that is still in England. It wasn't, in fact, my hat. I borrowed it. It wasn't very manly or rangerly, so I gave it back to its owner. The second aspect to that question, of course, is the wherefore, and I'm not sure if that's what you meant, but it was probably more, you probably did actually. Wherefore, of course, means why, and why was I wearing that pink hat? Well, the answer, of course, is that I'm not entirely all there up here, and I found the pink hat and I decided to wear it. I thought it looked quite snazzy, if a bit retro 70s and slightly effeminate, but it was amusing in London at the time. If you would like to see a picture of this hat, you can find it on Twitter or on Instagram. It's not really very exciting, but thank you, Heidi, for asking about it. I have left it where it belongs, in the United Kingdom. I just don't think it would work very well out here. There, astonishingly, Liam, are some crowned lapwings. Now, they're not actually that astonishing, but they're quite interesting in that it will now be around about time when they are making a nest. Now, you would think that a bird like that would have some kind of nest building competence. In fact, you know, it's probably unlikely. If you go to the left, sorry, that one there's a bit younger. Look at that. I think that one may have been born in the winter. That's not an adult, that's a sub-adult there. So what they do is they build their nests just in the open on the ground, and they're easy. I mean, they hardly make an effort to make an indent. They just kind of plop them on the ground, but they're so well camouflaged that they're obviously very seldom found by potential predators. And you can see the one behind there is definitely smaller than the one closest and a bit scruffier, and that's often an indication of a young bird. So I suspect that one was probably born not more than 2 months ago. That's quite interesting. So they're not obviously very seasonal breeders. I can check that up, of course, and I shall do. And you can just hear the adult going, "Oh, oh." Terrifying birds on a golf course. They will attack you if you go near their nests, and because their eggs are so well camouflaged, you can't really tell where the nest is that you're supposed to be threatening. And when you spend as much time, if you're on the golf course, and when you spend as much time off the actual playing course looking for your ball, attack by civet or crowned lapwing is a real danger of the sport. There's also a lot more insect sounds since I got back. Obviously the cicadas we will hear yelling their heads off at night, but a lot more in the way of grasshoppers sort of stridulating and crickets and that sort of thing, which is just lovely. We'll hear more of that this evening. And don't forget, tomorrow, of course, we'll have an extra half hour of nighttime driving, or nightish driving, because we're only starting at 4 o'clock. So we'll be starting half an hour later and finishing half an hour later too. Right, well, I think we shall have to head up towards Bushwalk waterhole. Not much in the way of tracks in this particular area. Lions. Lion tracks.
Yeah.
Right, I suspect those are the ones from this morning. We have spotted some lion tracks. Do you think they're filmable?
They're big.
Okay, they're pretty big. Oh, there they are. Nice. Yeah, in fact, you can see they were followed. But we'll have a look at them. Can you get the ones in the light there or the ones behind? You can get them. I'm sure you can get them here. Brave fellow. These ones? Okay, so here you can see two lions. I think there's one, certainly, so well, at least one lion. I think Scott was following two earlier today, and I think that's where these are. There are the front 4 feet, and there's the back pad. So about the same size as my hand. So pretty big lion. That's not the biggest male lion track I've ever seen. I think it's probably a male though. Which one it is, I couldn't tell you, but 2 of them did cross south. And what is very interesting to me is that on Mala Mala today, the lions, the 2 Matimbas and the 5 Birmingham boys were found. Not together, of course. Apparently the Birmingham boys did approach the Matimbas and they ran away, which tends to have been their general method of self-preservation since the invasion from the Birmingham boys a little while back. And that's, I mean, Mala Mala is probably about 4 kilometers as the crow flies from the south of our boundary. So that, unfortunately, is where they are. So who these 2 males were, we're not really sure. Can you hear the insects there? Beautiful insect sounds and a woodpecker. It's a wonderful time of year. Right, on we continue. And these tracks have clearly been followed. There are some human tracks there as well, of course. So they were followed this morning. We're going to nip across to Scott while we head down through this area towards the northern Buffelshoek cut line. I'm not sure what he's got, but no doubt it'll be pretty spectacular. And I will see you just a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone. And I hope Sandy in Indiana's watching, because she asked to see some spiders this morning and sadly didn't manage to find any for you then. But this is a community nest spider web that we have here, and kind of similar to the red-billed buffalo weavers we saw building a community nest this morning. These animals all live in this big apartment block. Now, sadly, I cannot seem to see even one spider, so maybe they're having a party inside. But I can see the excrements and old beetles and kills that have been made. The bottom of the web over here is almost like a gigantic toilet. And that's where you can see a lot of little bits of bugs and beetles and legs. Little bits of exoskeleton that have already been fed on by these community nest spiders. I wonder where they are hiding. Must be inside. Sometimes they move around the outside of the web, but not today, not that I can see, and I don't want to cause too much damage to their web. So we will leave them be and search for more along the way. But isn't it incredible how such small animals, they're very small spiders, can create such a large web? And I mean, they've got a lot of big leaves and big infrastructure here that they would have got in place. So we can learn a lot from little insects and the power and skill and ingenuity that they have in order to build such big empires. Anyway, we are going to now continue, and we've missed you guys, so tighten your laces and open your eyes and ears, because it's time to focus very closely again on our surroundings. There could be anything around these next corners. And we do have to be careful as we move through this bush. It's cooling down into a beautiful evening. The wind, interestingly, has changed a little bit. It's died down. It's not nearly as strong as it used to be. And it's blowing more in a westerly direction now, whereas before it was blowing in a southwesterly direction. So we've had to factor that into our equation. I chatted with Brent a little bit earlier about those marula fruit seeds that we had seen that had been fed on, and he very quickly informed me that it was in all likelihood a gerbil or a small rodent that would have been feeding on those fruits. So thanks to Brent for that information, and that pieces that puzzle together. It makes perfect sense as soon as I heard it. Their jaws probably aren't big enough to open that little cap that I flipped open with a knife for you, like the squirrels do. And the fact that they were on the ground, not at the base of a tree where squirrels live in the cavities of trees, indicates that it's a ground-dwelling creature that's emptied all those seeds out from a little bit earlier on in the year. What's quite nice about walking through the bush, even at this time of the year when it is getting very thick, is that there's quite often prominent game trails. It's not easy to see, but there is a bit of a sandy trail that we're moving along here. I think that herd of buffalo that you've been watching moved over here not too long ago, as there's a lot of buffalo tracks here. And here I can even see where the ground is ever so slightly dark in coloration from where one of the buffalo may have urinated. So not easy to see, but this patch here is a slightly darker shade. Not much fresh dung around though, so that's something to think about. Because usually where buffalo have been, there's a large amount of fresh dung. But one thing that I always try and remind people when on safari is that the art of tracking is an incredibly difficult and complex one. And in order to be able to be a master tracker, professional tracker, it takes a huge amount of natural talent, experience and skill. Not anyone can become a good tracker, that I can assure you. I am not one of them. I speak for those who are not professional trackers and take my hat off to those who are, because it's an incredible skill. And we're looking forward to having 2 trackers join our team. They're going to be arriving on Thursday to help us track down some animals. Not permanently though. They're just going to be here for a week over the TV broadcast that we're getting very excited about and getting ready for. And that way hopefully we'll be able to share this wonderful live safari experience with more and more people, because at the moment there simply aren't enough people getting involved in this adventure. Well, at least that's what I think. Now, what we have here is a very cool shell from a giant land snail, an African giant land snail. Sadly though, as I twist it around, you'll notice that a large portion of the shell is broken over here, but usually that would all be intact, and the large snail would have its head poking out here with its little antenna cruising along. And we will get to see a lot of these in the summer months, but for now I haven't seen one. The first rains that we got obviously weren't plentiful enough for these guys to emerge from their hiding places, or the ones that are still alive. This one clearly is not. But we are going to get to see a lot of these African land snails, and they make for great viewing. And what would be ideal is if we get to see them on foot. We'll get ground level with them and get you up close and personal with them. But this is the only snail that we really get to see here. That's not an aquatic snail, of course, so we don't see too many other snails in this area. We just see these monsters. So that's something to look forward to. Not sure what would have caught and killed this snail. Possibly a civet or a small predator, or maybe it just died of natural causes and its shell was broken by a passing animal. So not too sure exactly what would have caused this animal's death, but it certainly is not alive. That I can assure you. Cool. Again, just checking the wind. You can never be too sure or too safe when out here. It's quite easy to lose track of what you're doing, and I know for myself I am a prime candidate for getting carried away in the height of the moment, so I need to keep reminding myself that we do need to be aware of our surroundings. The official term for this is situational awareness. You've got to be aware of your surroundings and the situation you're in. And that is one of the first things and one of the most important things that you're taught as a trails guide or a walking guide. You need to be listening, smelling, and looking all at the same time. In bush like this, it's my hearing that I'm trying to focus on the most, because just a little growl or grunt or branch breaking might make the difference between you hearing an animal and being able to retract before it notices you, or it actually getting a big fright and knowing you're there and then deciding what to do next. So hearing is what I'm focused on now. And as we go, if something were to happen, it's also good to have escape routes planned. So each tree that I'm passing, I'm looking at ones and I'm thinking, well, this one wouldn't be a good one to climb. I mean, not easy to climb this tree if we were in a rush. Not enough branches. A leopard would very much like to climb up this tree though. And there's a strong chance that leopards have climbed this vertical marula tree before, but I wouldn't want to climb this one. A tree that I would much prefer to climb would be the silver cluster leaf over here. Let me see what I can do. And I'm safe, but Jandre isn't. So there's a bit of a problem here. Let me rethink that. But it is good to plan your escape routes as you're walking through the bush. So that's something to think about as we're walking and as you're looking. Think that's a good place to hide. There's a termite mound that we could all scramble up if we needed to. So all these little things to think about. Information that we are processing along the way. It's not just a jolly walk. Well, it is, just with a few complexities and things to think about in between. Maybe what we should do is actually go and look up on this termite mound. Come along, and we might have a good view from up there. Now, when approaching termite mounds, again, something to think about. We fortunately have been walking with the termite mound's shady section in our view. So if you just take a look here, on a hot afternoon, a leopard or a lion or any animal in this area would be lying in the shade in all likelihood. So when approaching a termite mound on a hot afternoon, be cautious of animals that could be sleeping in the shade, especially if you're approaching from the sunny side where you cannot see from very far. Because we're approaching from the shade into the sun, I'm not too concerned that anything is going to be on the other side, because it wouldn't make sense. It's a bit too hot for anything to be lying in the sun. But again, just something to think about. A very small thing that could make a very big difference. Well, hopefully this one's not too complicated for Jandre to scramble up, but he is an athletic man, so I don't think we've got anything to worry about. Ah, a vantage point. This is so cool up here. So I'm just going to let Jandre, whenever he's ready, to pan you around and show you this view. I mean, you can't see incredibly far, but we're now kind of at eye level with a lot of these marula trees. And as I swivel around, you'll get to see a bit of the background. And I can see a lot further than I could see before. So now we kind of know why the leopard love to come up onto these mounds and creep around, make sure there's no potential prey nearby, because I can see probably twice or 3 times as far as I could before. In our situation, we are certainly not looking for any dinner like a leopard would be, but quite the opposite. We're looking out for any danger or anything interesting, really. It's not all about danger out here, but it is important to remember that things are quite nervous of us, and it's their nervousness of us as humans that creates them to panic. Andre, good luck coming down. There we go. Nice cool breeze blowing into us now. Now we've decided to walk through this area for no specific reason. We're not really looking for anything in particular. We're just wanting to explore an area that is inaccessible with the vehicles. And that's important to know. We're not trying to track anything down. We're just literally moseying about from A to B, enjoying a change of scenery. Now, this poor old bush willow tree, you can see, has been capsized. And what's happened is that an elephant would have come here, pushed this tree over to access all of these roots. So it probably didn't feed on any of the leaves of this tree, but you can see here the chunks of bark on the roots that they've ripped off all around us here. And this whole tree would have been pushed over simply to access the roots. So interesting how elephants will attack specific parts of a plant at different times of the year. And here, as Jean-Andre moves out in a few moments, you'll actually see how the elephants have excavated around trying to get at more of the roots to feed on. And even though, yeah, you can see all the soil around us where they would have been using their trunk and feet to dig. And what's interesting about this is even though it is destructive for this individual tree, it's usually beneficial for future vegetation that can grow in and under all these areas that now become inaccessible to other animals. So this whole area within this tree is going to become like a nursery. And within this nursery, all the trees can get to a point in a stage of their life where they can kind of sustain themselves and hopefully grow into very big trees another day. Not only is it going to form a nursery for the smaller growth and trees around us, but it's also going to be a home for small animals that can seek refuge in this tree as it gets broken down, in the cracks in the bark and in the cavities. And it's already kind of like quite a comfy home where I'm enjoying myself so much. I feel like I could invite you all in for a cup of tea. Very nice. Cool. Okay. Well, what I love about this show is that you're not only stuck with any one of us for too long of a period, and James has just found the creature responsible for pushing over this tree. So go and take a look and we'll catch up a little bit later.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Giga, where we have just found the animal that has created the distress to the combretum that Scott was showing you. Here we've got a very small herd of elephants, just 3 of them that we can see so far. I, of course, have got sunscreen in my eye in the interim, and therefore there may be 10 or 12 elephants around at the moment, but all I can see are 3. Liam, you're only on 3, are you?
I say 4.
4. Okay, I'm missing 1. So this one, of course, is the closest, and we're right on the Buffelshoek cut line, so it is in fact in Buffelshoek. So our eyes are trespassing, but that's quite loud apparently these days. And this is a young bull, and it's not entirely unusual, especially as the bush starts to green up and the food becomes more abundant. You can see this one is now grazing. As the food becomes more abundant, so the herds will generally disperse a bit, and you'll find these little groupings of 3 or 4. They will come together with other herds later on, but often forage alone like this in little groups of 3 or 4. You'll probably find that the cow, there's a large cow behind us, just hidden behind a tree. We can't really see her at the moment. She is probably the mother of both of these, this young bull, and then there's another young, I don't know if he's a bull or a cow yet, real youngster, just further back. We'll try and go back a little bit and show you the rest of them. I've now, of course, despite being parked on a large slope, have managed to wedge us on a with sticks, I'm going to have to start the engine. Now we'll just gently roll back. Won't we, Ben? There we go. Much more pleasant sounding. There we go. There's the youngster there. And I'm sure his mum, or her mum, just the case may be, I'll try and identify whether that's a male or female. I'm sure the other big one is the mother of both of these. Looks like a very young bull to me. We're not full here, Liam. Do you really see full?
My nanya one.
No, another small one. Okay, fine. Just lovely in this sort of slowly setting light. I think, you know, a lot of photographers will complain when an animal turns around and shows you its bottom, but for elephants that seems to be very different. They seem to have very appealing photographic subjects, or the back ends of elephants. A couple of drongos around the place. And a lovely gentle breeze blowing in from the south. Lovely. He's eating at the moment something called Dicrostachys cinerea, or the sicklebush, and that's an encroacher species. And you find in areas that don't have elephants and do have other grazing pressure that Dicrostachys bush becomes a real encroacher. So it takes over in the absence of large browsing herbivores, and of course you don't get any larger browsing a herbivore than you do an elephant. And you can see by the way it eats, it would absolutely keep the population of Dicrostachys trees at bay were there to be no issue. Sorry, I just got a little bit confused there, a whole lot of nonsense in the ear from the Game Drive channel. But you can see elephants, of course, make an enormous difference to the height of the bush wherever you happen to be. And even some of these combretum trees, which Scott showed you being pushed over, they will become very thick and sort of take over and outcompete the grass sward in the absence of animals that will feed on them. And of course they've evolved to live with elephants, and that's why they're so good at dealing with being pushed over. They just stick up shoots in different ways, and it's all rather clever out here how everything links together and works so perfectly. Right, the elephants have gone to Biffles Hook, and we are now going to Biffles Hook Dam. If I can turn the car on. There we go. See what we can see there. Liam, how's my eye looking? Does it look sore? No?
Yeah.
It does look. Yes, I'm looking for sympathy. Yeah. I've got some sunscreen in it, everybody. Deeply painful. Liam, of course, has offered nothing in the way of first aid, despite the fact that he is now a qualified level 1 first aider.
You have to be bleeding first.
I have to be bleeding.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, okay. So bleeding, if I break a bone?
Yes, that qualifies.
Does that qualify? Okay, good. All right. But sunscreen in the eye is beneath you, is it? Right.
You go to the bottom of that.
Good to know. Liam, of course, has turned into a superb tracker. He spotted saying it could be an Ellie mark. Now, what he means is that that is a drag mark, yeah? Well spotted, unless... No, it's not. It's a monitor lizard. That's quite interesting. I'll tell you the story. Well spotted. Will you be able to get that? Okay. So, let me get out of the car quickly. So here you can see something has dragged across the road, and I'll tell you what it is just now. Well, I think I did already tell you what it is. But what Viam was looking for, he's tried to cover himself, you see, like all good trackers out here. There's an elephant just behind us. Like all good trackers, he's tried to cover his bases. Now, when we look for a drag mark, you look for something obvious. It's been dragged across a road, and it's often something like a hyena or a leopard that has moved something, either to, if in the case of a hyena, back to the den, or in the case of a leopard, to a tree that's appropriate to climb. And that's why you'd find this drag mark across the road. Now, elephants, when they walk, they often drag their trunks, and they do leave something that looks like a drag mark, so sometimes it can be a bit confusing. This, however, is a monitor lizard, and I know that simply because there are a whole lot of little clawed tracks right next to where the body and the tail of the monitor have dragged through here. It's quite a big one. There's a termite mound over there, and I suspect what's happened is that this is a rock monitor or tree monitor, same thing, and I think it's probably gone off into that termite mound looking for various things to eat. And they'll eat probably largely lots of other reptiles. They'll also eat snakes sometimes, and they're basically anything they can get their hands on. Right, no more elephants. He didn't take any exception to me, which is quite lucky. Right. Oh dear. Chica's doors don't shut so well anymore. Is Phyllis, who says, isn't it an African salute when an elephant turns its bottom towards you? Phyllis, I suppose it might be. I don't think it's an African salute, but you might call it an African salute. Just remember, when you do contact us on Twitter, it's lovely to hear where you're from as well, just so that we can join the dots as to where you are all tweeting from. It's wonderful to know which parts of this great globe you happen to be watching us from. There's some more elephants in Bushwalk here. This is part of the group. Oh, you've seen her before, haven't you, Liam?
Yeah.
So there's a cow with a very recurved tusks. Very recurved. One of them facing almost backwards. She probably kicks that as she walks, you know. They're pretty big, those tusks, too. Wow. She's actually definitely probably got to be careful. I say that a lot these days, definitely, probably. What I'm doing is covering my bases. Of course, makes no sense at all. But she could well have to watch out for kicking that with her leg. I'm just looking at her leg to see if there isn't some kind of scarring. But I don't see any. So she's probably very careful. It's fascinating. Just going to sneak a little bit forward. It sounds like there's a whole lot more to the right-hand side. Sorry about that, everybody. Back live. And the only serious charge I ever had from an elephant, or, seriously serious one, was from an elephant with recurved tusks, a bit like this one. And I think she was a very old cow, and it was very early on in my guiding career. And I wonder if she didn't have a bad experience, perhaps with the culling. But she used to see a vehicle turn around and just start running at us, which is, of course, distinctly terrifying. But this one doesn't seem to be too worried at all. And you can see that tusk is used extensively for digging. Covered in dirt, much more so than the others are. Oh, there's a tiny, tiny one behind us. Tiny.
You need to move.
Yeah, I need to move. I just don't want to frighten you. Okay, we will... Sorry, then. Okay, I'm going to try and reposition. This elephant is minute. Oh! Sorry about that, everybody. I just don't want to start the engine and startle it or the mother. Oh, that is too priceless for words. That is a tiny, tiny elephant. Look, it's so sweet. So apparently Brent saw this one yesterday. We're just going to be very careful around here. The herd is just crossing all sides of us. And apparently that one wasn't looking good so yesterday because of the heat probably, but now seems to be absolutely fine. I'm just going to reverse back a bit. If we do lose us, I'm sorry in advance. It seems to be a bit dodgy in the signal here. We just need to move. Possibly when we move that we're losing it. Sorry about that, everybody. We are back, and you can see that little thing even now already trying to use its trunk, which is almost completely useless. So sweet. So I mean, I wouldn't put that at much more than a month and a half to 2 months old. That is a tiny, tiny elephant. Beautiful. So sweet. Mari and Susie in Chicago, thank you very much for your concern about this elephant which Brent saw yesterday. Apparently in some difficulty at Bushwalk Dam, but you can rest assured clearly that, as you know, with elephants, they are so good at looking after each other when they're sick or infirm or not very well, and the same with babies. So they do look after each other, and I'm sure that's why this one is fine. The mother's being a little bit defensive about this, and so I'm not going to start the engine again for a little while. I want her to be completely comfortable around us. So I did reverse back a bit, and you can see Mum walks forward slowly and turned to us and just gave us a little bit of a trunk shake. And she's left the youngster in the care of the aunts. We'll just stop here and see if we can't get another view. There comes a little one. I don't know if you can get it, Yum. There it is. Even at this age, those little games that it's playing with the trunk, it's definitely not eating vegetation at this stage, but playing with it all the time. And those games will play a hugely important role as he or she learns to use that almost useless trunk. Oh look, this isn't a mother. Sorry, I got a little confused between the elephants. he is trying to suckle. Isn't that wonderful? Too sweet. Oh, a second though. I wonder if that's not an aunt who's just tried to suckle from. I think it is, you know. I don't think that's the mother at all. I think he or she is just a little bit thirsty, and Mummy, who's busy defending the home at the moment, so the little one was looking for sustenance from someone else. I'm just trying to see again. I can't see. I mean, there seems to be definitely some attempt to suckle. I'm not sure that that cow is lactating. Let's see what happens now. That's just too sweet for words. Just never ceases to amaze me how amazingly dexterous they are. The adults, I mean, around a little one like this, they have to step all over it, and the babies never get stood upon. Now, I don't think that cow that Wiam's on now is lactating. That's interesting. Either seeking comfort or looking for some kind of meal from an auntie or a sister or something like that. Again, seemingly with mother, and let's see, it doesn't try, and it's still a little bit behind. Now, a baby elephant like that, when it's born, is about 100 kilograms, which is the same size as an adult male warthog. 100 kilograms is 220 pounds, which is a fairly substantial animal. That's bigger than most human beings. So although it looks quite cute and sweet on your screen, it's not actually that small. And that's a solid 100 kilograms of being. Although it looks pretty fragile and gentle. Clearly not that sure on its feet just yet. We watched it fall over. Most amusing. Eating, what are they eating? They're picking off some silver cluster leaf bushes. No, they're not. That's a marula. They're eating some marula leaves. Is it a marula? No, it's not. It's a Crumbritum bush. This is a Crumbritum bush. Much like the one Scott showed you that had been pushed over. That is really very special indeed. Right, they're grazing off into Bushwalk as well. We're still quite some distance from the dam, and we're going to roll slowly down this hill. If you do lose us again, I'm sorry about that. I apologize in advance, and we'll probably link across to somebody with better signal if it does happen. Here we go. Oh, that was lovely. Okay, we're going to go across to Scott and
Welcome back, everyone. And we are just creeping through some very thick bush at the moment, so you've come at an exciting time. We're going to have to keep it slow, keep the old sock moving. Wind's still in our favor. Still, it's hardly blowing. It's a very still evening, but if anything, blowing slightly to our west, and we are making our way towards the treehouse waterhole. A slight change in plans from before. Just need to rig my radio back onto my belt. Before I carry on though, I've been carrying this shell for quite a while, and this is a perfect giant African land snail shell, as you can see, in its entirety. But what I forgot to mention earlier is that they're actually not white in color, and this one you can see has been slowly broken down by the sun. No different to, I guess, the hyena droppings that appear very white in color after they've been baked by the sun. And they're usually a brownish color that you can see. It's got a loud ringing noise in my ear all of a sudden. So I'm going to turn my radio off, see if that helps. But yes, basically the African land snail is not white in color, it's brown, and you can see a little bit of these browny colorations remaining. It probably died at the end of last summer, and hopefully when we find you a new one fairly soon, you'll get to see it in its entirety, dark brown shell, as well as the little snail poking out with its antennas. Good. I'm going to put this back down, turn my radio back on. Seems better. Good. So we were going to make our way towards Philemon's Dip, but have now decided to go to Treehouse Dam instead. Jandra is also having some trouble with his radio. And those are the joys of being on a live safari. You get to see all the action in between. And let's hope the radio is working now. So, possible animals that we could bump into, animals that some of you know very well. This is the area where Shadow, a female leopard, likes to spend time, and you could find her lying up, relaxing on a termite mound, or if you're lucky, she may have a kill hoisted up in a tree. Quite a few elephants and buffalo have been moving through this area. Oh, there goes the radio again, making a very loud beeping noise in my ear. Jess, if you can hear me, could you just give me some confirmation that we're still live and what's going on? Not sure what's causing trouble with the radio. It might be that when Jess tries to communicate with me, it creates this loud ringing noise in my ear. Rather than wasting any time sending up smoke signals here, I'm just going to get a hold of Jess directly. Jess, are we still live? Can you copy me?
You are still live. Someone on the stream is either sitting on their radio.
Okay. Well, as you heard Jess's message, there could be somebody sitting on the radio. And I'm guessing that could be our Russian genius, Alex. He might be sitting on the radio. Anyway, we'll find out around the campfire a little bit later. But all joys of a live safari and the behind the scenes, almost in front of the scenes, behind the scenes, you get to see everything as it happens, which can be quite entertaining at times, quite frustrating at times. But you hear every step of the way, and that is the most important thing to remember, I think. Now, we've got good comms now with the final control room, so that's good news. We're back in action and we can start focusing on the bushwalk and what's going on out here. Now, I am not too sure which animal is responsible for this. But you can see a lot of droppings and poop, and actually where this bark of this tree has been fed on. And I'm just going to peel a little bit of these droppings away so you get to see them. As this insect, I'm guessing, has been feeding on the tree, it's simultaneously been pooping. Now, that is a possible animal that is responsible for this, or possibly even a bush baby. I'm not too sure if these would be the droppings from a bush baby. I don't think they are, but bush babies will tap into trees and then feed on the gum that leaks out of it. Here you can see some gum from this tree, or sap, which is kind of like bubble gum, I guess. You can see how it's kind of sticking to my finger like that. And this is what the bush babies will feed on, mainly from acacias. But there's some kind of a bug or critter that is feeding specifically on these bush willow trees that we need to find out who's responsible for it. I'll certainly be asking Brent and James and Jamie if they have any idea, but I did see some of this a little bit earlier and wasn't sure exactly who was responsible for it. But nice to know that there are some other animals, not just the big ones, feeding on the various parts of these trees. It's not just the elephants that have pushed them over, like this one here. They're getting attacked from all angles. Well, Gregory on Twitter, good to have you on the Bushwalk, and also good to hear that you like eating escargot, eating snails. I have never eaten a giant African land snail, but I certainly do know that they are edible and some of the local people will feed on them. What I have fed on, which is interesting and kind of in a similar bracket, is the African bullfrog. It's a very large frog that we will see in the summer months, and at a camp where I used to work in the southern Sabi Sands, the trackers were boiling a pot of these frogs one morning, and it was a rainy morning, I remember, and the thought of this hot frog that they'd been boiling in amongst chilies was quite good, and it tasted a lot like chicken. So that is a similar kind of being that's strange that I have fed on, but I have yet to feed on the African land snail, but know that they are edible. Not a very popular cuisine in South Africa though, Gregory, but I'm sure if you come out you'll be able to find a snail or two to fry up or cook however you desire. It leads to an interesting debate, eating animals, and whether it's better to eat wild animals or domestic ones, and it's not a debate we're going to go down now, but one worth looking into and thinking about. You know, wild animals living off natural bush and vegetation that hasn't been plowed and farmed and planted, where all the little bugs and insects and birds can naturally occur, as well as the bigger animals. Is that not better than farming animals that require very intensive techniques? I don't know. It's a tricky one. There's a lot of mouths to feed on this planet, but one worth thinking about on the topic of Gregory's escargot. Now, this is going to be tricky, but we're going to go for it. Genre, there's two butterflies called blue pansies, one of which, oh, yay, it landed right here next to us. And it's gone. It's just gone. But you would have got a glimpse of it, and that was a bonus. It flew much closer than I was expecting it to. One of its mates I've lost track of. Oh, it's over here. Let's see if we can get it. I'm going to use this blade of grass to try and point it out to Gendre, and then what we might be able to do, even if it doesn't work in real time, we'll be able to get Jess and Kirsty in the final control room to maybe slow motion the video. It's just up ahead of us here, Gendre. Can you... Ah! Oh, butterfly hunting. We're going to get it this time, though. Forgive me. I cannot resist this opportunity. Oh, no. I think we're going to have to give up. But that's a little blue pansy, and I think the first view you got of it was probably going to be the best one. as it flew perfectly right next to us for Jean-Ray to film. We did get a glimpse of it, Jean-Ray, kind of. Okay. But we cannot capture every moment along the way, and that's what's going to keep you guys coming back for more safari action. Well, we've got a new viewer, obviously hasn't been tuned in for very long in this bushwalk, and she would like to know what I'm carrying in my hand. Well, Sherry, this is one of my socks. I don't have the most colorful or fancy of socks. It's just plain black that's faded a little bit. And within it is some ash from our campfire. And what it tells us is that at the moment there's hardly a breath of wind. And it's kind of all just wafting around in our direction. If it was going in any direction very strongly, we would know which way the wind was blowing in. So for now, it's a very still evening. It just helps us to know how the wind's moving, because if we do get ourselves into a dangerous position, or better than that, before we get ourselves into a dangerous position, we know what the important factors are around us. Can the animals smell us? Can they only see us? Have they heard us? Which way should we go? Which way have they come from? All these different things can be pieced together quite quickly, but it's good to know the wind direction when on foot, because there are some potentially dangerous animals out here that we are going to be doing our best to avoid. But good to know you're with us, Sherry. And oh, a snake, it's moving so quickly. Oh, there's no ways we're going to get to it. It's a western striped-bellied sand snake. And it's one of the fastest snakes in Africa. That's why I didn't even bother running after it. It's not venomous, but it's quite thin and incredibly quick. I just heard it actually slithering through the grass, and it shot off. I mean, from the moment I said snake, it was where I'm standing here probably, and it slithered within a matter of seconds. I'm saying like 2 seconds. It had gone all the way through here and off into those bushes. I mean, just lightning fast. So again, just like the butterfly, we didn't get to show you the best view. The snake, we didn't get to show you the best view, but we will in the future. Thankfully, it wasn't a highly venomous snake. They are of little or no danger to us. No danger to us, the western striped-bellied sand snake. But it's also important to remember, especially for those people who are irrationally scared of snakes, they will generally avoid us at all costs, and they hear us coming, see us coming, feel us coming, and get out of our way long before they have to cause any damage to us, or us potentially cause any damage to them. Just heard something there, sorry guys, but I think it's all good. Important not to take any chances though. And I've got an earpiece in this ear, so not ideal really, but I can still hear with one ear, and that's why I'm just letting it swivel all the way around. Just a funny grumbling sound that I heard. And now that the situation is safe, we can address a question that's just come through from Cheryl. And she would like to know why I'm not wearing any kind of protection around my legs in the chance that a snake could bite me. It's a good question, Cheryl. I personally think there's far greater danger walking down the streets of any city than walking through the African bush, and feel quite safe and comfortable with as little clothing on as possible. And had you guys not been with us on this walk, I probably wouldn't have had a shirt, and I would have had some more comfortable open shoes on. But that's not the case, and the chances, like I say, are so slim of being bitten that I'd rather take that risk and be comfortable living my life in the African wilderness than walk around in an armor-plated suit so that nothing can attack me, because there's such a small chance of something going wrong, especially because of our situational awareness, of our training. We are aware of the potential dangers and tuned into the potential dangers, and therefore there's a very small chance of coming unstuck. Put me in a city and it would probably be the other way around, and you guys would do a good job of teaching me what is safe and what is not. But in the African bush, it is my home, it's a place where I've spent a lot of time, and I feel very comfortable here. So before we go any further though, the reason why I got down a bit earlier was to show you, I don't know if it's going to be possible, but a small kind of coin slot in the ground. So you can see how the shape is much like a coin slot. I'll put my finger there to give you a reference of kind of size and shape. It's not round, that's for certain. And an animal that lives in burrows like this, that are coin slotted in shape, would be a scorpion. Flat body, not a round body. And there's a scorpion in that hole. So that's something good to know. But we are probably not going to be able to entice it out for you. But if we came here at night, it may be waiting at the entrance to that burrow with its pincers ready to latch onto anything that walks past. They're typically ambush predators. I just want to see if I can sneak you up onto one last termite mound to see the sunset, and then we're going to probably send you back to James. But I can't resist showing you one last view. I mean, it's just ridiculous to think that this termite mound we are approaching was built by tiny, miniature little insects. I mean, the teamwork and dedication to build this massive, massive structure. I mean, look at how big it is. It's like the size of a house. Well, a small house, but you could live in there as a human. And it's rock solid. An elephant could stand on top of this. And the smallest of animals have made it. Oh, this is going to be beautiful, everyone. Brace yourselves. So you could say we slightly early, ever so slightly. The sun's a little bit high up, but I actually couldn't see it from where we were down below. But a beautiful, beautiful evening here, and again, good to have a vantage point where we can look out and assess our surrounding areas and just savor the beauty, really. And while we are up here, I guess it may be quite a useful time to show you how intricate this building can be at its finest stages. Now, there's some very fine flakes of earth that have been very cleverly placed together piece by piece, and you can see all these little, very small, thin, fairly surprisingly strong. Well, I broke that little piece by mistake, but bear in mind, I'm not here trying to damage it. I'm just trying to understand how these guys go about building these massive structures. But all of this is the most recent growth, probably from within the last few weeks when we did get our last rain. You can see the older growth, which is here, is not nearly as fresh or bumpy, and rock solid. I mean, the fact that they can build these structures using just mud and their saliva is a miracle. It really is. All controlled by one lady buried deep in the royal chamber below us. She's a massive egg-laying machine. She's basically a grub that cannot move. She's got servants that run around her, either taking her eggs out or bringing her food in. But she just lies there laying eggs, potentially 30,000 eggs a day. And she needs to create those numbers daily to be able to look after her massive empire, which she's built. And what may have actually happened in this termite mound is that one female may have stayed alive for about 15 years, 12 to 15 years. They can live for long periods of time. And then when she dies, another female may come in and take over from her, or the mound may become inactive and dormant, and other animals will come and start living in here, like hyena, porcupine, warthog. So they are very important structures for the termites while they're alive, but also for other animals that will come and live in these mounds once the termites have moved out. So a keystone structure for this environment, also great for us to enjoy the sunset, and also very useful for leopards, checking for vantage points, checking for potential prey. And we're just going to have to take our hats off to these termites for their construction genius. I'm wondering what our easiest route down is, yeah? Probably the way we came. It was quite a nice natural staircase. Okay, well, we are going to now probably start making our way back towards the vehicle. It's beginning to get dark and we don't want to be walking around on foot after dark. That would not be a good idea. But we may be able to say one last goodbye before we do get to the vehicle, but it's time to start kind of marching back in that direction. And while we march off, we're going to send you back to James with another beautiful view of the sunset. See you later.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Jiga, where we are viewing the magnificent African sunset. And I don't know, I'm sorry if I do bang on about this a bit, but I just find it so enthralling every single day, the way it changes. And I mean, certainly you get some good ones in England, but you don't get them like this. I have to say, they don't quite match up to the great African sunset. And so what I'm going to do is take myself a small photograph of the sunset. Of course, this frustrates the cameraman I'm with deeply, because I'm the world's most pathetic photographer. I'm now going to, with my sort of tripod, take the first of my summer sunset shots. I, of course, am the greatest landscape photographer in history. Not so, Viam?
Oh, of course.
Yes, there we go. Magnificent shot it's going to be. I just can't make it actually take it, which is a bit distressing. It's tough when the best landscape photographer in the world is unable to make his camera take the shot. Right, everybody, here we go. What we're going to do, you might find this quite interesting, is we're going to make the exposure time a little bit longer. This camera's really good if you want to learn. We're going to bash the f-stop all the way to 32 so that our depth of field is much greater. It will mean that we have to make it a little bit brighter with the shutter speed. And we don't want it to move, so I'm going to set the timer for 2 seconds. And here we go. Are we ready, Viam? Oh, magnificent. I will send it in for competitions immediately. And maybe one more with it zoomed in, and then we'll carry on. We haven't found any tracks, I'm afraid, people, but it's just so lovely to be out here. I can't express to you how marvellous it is to be back in the African wild. That is a really pretty average photograph, I have to say. I think we might leave it. I'll just take that one, just for the sake of it. There we go. Right, on we go. I think the less we say about that, the better, don't you, Liam?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I agree.
Probably. Okay.
I'll just edit it out later.
We'll just edit it out. Okay. Here we go. So our plan now is going to be head towards the Umlulwati drainage line as the sun sets below, my first sunset sinks below the Drakensberg Mountains. And it's also amazing to see how far south the sun has come in the last 2 weeks while I've been away. When I left, it was probably about, if you're looking at it at this angle here, it was probably, if we were parked here 2 weeks ago, it would have been, say, over there. It would have been setting there. And in the middle of winter, of course, it's setting around there, like that. It is rather amazing how fast it does move. Right, here we go, towards the Mlilwati, hoping that some leopard has taken refuge in a drainage line there for some reason. We had a very nice giraffe sighting while you were walking with Scott. And Liam said to me, the sun is setting in the giraffe's eyes. And I thought he was just being poetic, you know, because he can be poetic, our Liam. Doesn't say a great deal, but when he does speak, it's normally quite poetic. Unless he's hungry, in which case it's just abusive. And indeed, it was the sun setting in the giraffe's eyes. So perfectly was it lined up with our wonderful African sun. We'll drive straight into it. We'll drive into the sunset there. Oh, that's wonderful to see. Did miss that. You're putting a jersey on. He was putting a jersey on. Truly have taken... Oh no, sorry, he's just actually finding himself something to eat. Yeah, show us what you're going to eat. That is his second banana for the afternoon. Sorry about that, everybody. Can't explain it myself. Lady Macbeth in the United Kingdom, where I've just been, you say you're going to find me a British sunset. I did actually have 3 very, very good ones in Cornwall. I must say that we had some wonderful setting suns over the sky, over the sea there. And while I don't think they're quite as magnificent as some of the ones we get here, what was so wonderful was that they lasted so long. Of course, the higher your latitude, so the further off north or south you go, the longer the sunset will last. And here, of course, that sun went down, probably, we were sat there for what, maybe 3 minutes? And the sun already went its whole length down the sky, and by the time we get out of here, it will have sunk completely, and in less than, say, 40 minutes, it will be almost pitch dark. And in the UK, of course, that was very different. It takes much longer for it to get dark once the sun is set, and the sun tends to move much more slowly through the sky when it's setting. Oh, lovely smell of some kind of flower that's flowered here. Oh, that's beautiful. And then Sherry agreeing with me that she's never met a sunset she didn't like. Sherry, I have to agree, I've never met one I didn't like either. So enjoy them. So just to reiterate, while we're talking about suns setting and rising, well, we weren't talking about that. I'm introducing the subject of the rising. Tomorrow morning, do not be surprised to find us out a little bit earlier. Half an hour earlier we're going to start, so we're going to kick off at 5:30 our time. What do you point at there? Yeah? Beefaloes. Why did you point them out? You don't like them very much. Ooh, wonderful view. I'm going to just sneak a little bit. There we go. So just Liam spotted 2 buffalo bulls ruminating there. Oh, and we can hear that beautiful bird again. Listen carefully. Come on, call again. It's gone totally silent. We watched 2 buffalo bulls chewing the cud there, enjoying the sunset, facing west in the clearing underneath a magnificent old balanites or torchwood tree. And the bird that I heard was, of course, the red-chested cuckoo, or Piet my vrou. And such a wonderful images and memories that bird conjures up for me of my times in the wild. Right, anyway, as I was saying, before VM spotted the buffaloes, we're going out half an hour earlier, so kick off at 5:30 for us. And I'm not going to attempt to work out what that means for wherever you are in the world, mainly because I know that daylight savings is changing at some stage soon, and it's just a bit complicated even without that. So whatever you're on, Central Eastern Time or Western Time or Mountain Time or your own time, Greenwich Mean Time perhaps if you're in Britain. Lady Macbeth, you will be in Britain. We're going to go half an hour earlier tomorrow morning and half an hour later tomorrow afternoon. So 4 o'clock Central African Time tomorrow afternoon and 5:30 Central African Time in the morning tomorrow. Down a little bit as we head down into the dip. Lose your picture here. I'm sorry about that if we do.
Welcome back, everyone. And it sounds like James was going through a bad signal area, but not to worry. You're back on foot, tighten your laces, and let's go. I did see some kudu up ahead of us. The Jandre and I were doing a mock stalk. We went into predator mode and we are trying to now creep up on the kudu. Ooh. They might be able to smell us. The wind's blowing gently in their direction. But it'll be great to get you a visual of one animal on foot. Although it's important to remember that a lot of the time, animals will be extremely nervous of us on foot. They're used to seeing us in the vehicles. They can hear us coming from a long way in the vehicles. And that makes them feel more at ease with our presence. Whereas on foot, they don't trust us as much. Genre, it's going to be a bit of a gamble, but straight ahead of us, we can see her actually looking at us. And drop Genre in the deep end here. He may just be able to pick her up. Oh, jeez, well, he's nailing it. So I just crept behind and taking a look at his monitor. And she's keeping her eyes beadily on us. But what's interesting is that you can see her ears swiveling around. So she's, and her ears led her to look in another direction there. So she's obviously feeling quite safe. And look at the way her ears will pivot around like giant satellite dishes, making sure that there's no other threats that she cannot see, like us. And is she coming towards us? It looks like she might be. Coming for a closer inspection. Look at how awesome this is. And what's great is that Genre is displaying some incredible camera work, keeping the shot incredibly steady. He's not got a tripod, he's freehanding. And she's actually so relaxed, she's nibbling away in front of us. What a lot of you may realize is that it's a very different view when we are on ground level with these animals. It gives you a better idea of how big they are. And she's probably as tall as I am when she has her head up high. This is so cool. And a lot of the time you never know what to expect in Africa or when on safari. And this is a great example thereof. I was expecting her to run off. As I said, they're often a lot more nervous of us when we are on foot. But probably the fact that we were stalking up on her, she must have thought we were somewhat slow and not dangerous and comical perhaps, and thought, well, these guys are some kind of a joke. Certainly nothing that I need to be worried about. Let's try and get a little bit closer and see what happens. And this could well be the first animal a lot of you are seeing on the bushwalk. So a momentous occasion, but it wasn't too long ago when Stefan was leading the walks that we got quite close and personal with the big elephant bull. Sadly, the kudu has just moved off in search of more fresh green nibbles to chew on. But like I said, it's not the aim or focus of these walks to get you close to animals. That's what you're going to do in the vehicles. From time to time, though, we may get lucky and may be able to creep up to a big elephant bull who's sleeping under the shade of a tree and give you that adrenaline and excitement of being close to the dangerous animals. But it's not going to happen very often, and we are going to always err on the side of caution, giving the animals as much space and time to do what they need without ever putting them in a situation where they feel they need to attack us. So always remember that. That's our main goal when on foot, is not to disturb the animals. It's just to find them, call the vehicles in to get you closer views, or to show you the smaller things along the way. Very good. There's some beautiful pieces of old hardwood here that I want to pick up and show you. Now, I mean, this has even been burnt in a fire, but not even the fire was powerful enough to burn through this whole log. And look at how beautiful the grains are and all the shapes and textures along this branch. And that's the first one that I'd like to show you. I mean, they make such good ornaments. You could just pop this kind of at the basin in your bathroom, and it creates quite a nice decorative feature. Or at least I think so. And it's an incredibly hard wood, probably one of the strongest or heaviest woods in this area, called zebra wood. And its branches would have come off this tree over here. So this is the big old zebra wood that was responsible for these branches that have fallen down, and even lying on the ground are termite resistant. There's no insects that can feed through these, and even fire. Again, this one you can see was charred on this end. Even fire battles to consume this wood. Beautiful. I'm a wood fan, everyone, so apologies if you don't like it, but I can't help but stop and show you these hardwoods. It's remarkable for me how they manage to survive even the termites that can eat through just about anything out here. And one day, when I do have a house of my own, it will be covered with small little decorative pieces of hardwood like that zebra wood. Ooh, here's another zebra wood. This one must be possibly even 1,000 years old before it died. I mean, this is huge for a zebra wood of this area. And look at how it's sprouted up beautifully from ground level here. And I mean, even this very thin piece of bark over here that I'm kind of playing with, I mean, it's probably only 2 millimeters thick, but I can't break it. I mean, it's just incredibly hard. So that gives you an idea. Here's a few also. I mean, tiny little pieces that are incredibly strong. What I like about the zebra woods as well is you get these small bits of lichen and moss growing on the bark. Come and have a closer look here. I'm not sure what the light's like now. It's probably not the best, but look at these beautiful lime green lichens that grow along the bark. I can assure you that there are 1 or 3 scorpions in this tree as well. There's lots of little rifts and cracks and grooves that they can live in. And if I had my scorpion torch here, my black light or UV torch, and it was pitch dark, I'm sure if we scanned it along this tree we'd find quite a few arboreal scorpions. But that'll be for another day, not for now. Still a very still evening, wind-wise, not much happening, which is all good. Just doing my routine checks. Well, good evening to Teresa in Virginia Beach, and I'm glad you've made the suggestion you have because it's a good one. For those of you who were on the sunrise safari, you would have seen the yellow-billed hornbills mating and possibly looking for a home of their future offspring, and Teresa would like me to share that with Jamie and James and Brent, and I certainly will. Just so that you know, Teresa, it was on Central Road between Vulture's Nest and Hyena Road. So in that area, big marula tree on Central Road between Vulture's Nest and Hyena Road. But I'll be sure to pass that on to them. There were some great cavities within that tree that looked like they could in fact nest in. So that's a strong likelihood. That's something that could happen. Jeandre's just got tangled his antenna in a branch behind him. Please, can I show them, Jeandre? I can't resist. So Jeandre tried to come forward, and then you can see the antenna stuck in the tree over there. So that's what happened, and that's why I had to reverse all of a sudden. But on that slightly funny note, we are going to say goodbye. It is time for us to get back to the safety of the vehicle, but it's been so awesome having you guys on a bushwalk with us. Thanks so much to Jeandre for his camera work. It's not an easy job holding the camera steady for so long. Flies are buzzing around his face. He can't swat them away. He's got the backpack on, dodging trees. He's got a lot to deal with, so well done to him. And thanks so much for joining. We are going to send you back to James, who's on the vehicle waiting for you. And you can look forward to Brent taking you out for a walk tomorrow morning. And I'm going to be the one chauffeuring the vehicle around. Anyway, it's been wonderful, and thanks so much. We need to head off. See you next time.
Hello again, and that was a highly entertaining hour spent wedged on a mystery log that popped out of nowhere and wedged itself under the front of the car. We were very kindly rescued by Brent, who had to bring us. I made a rookie mistake, something that you should never do, and I should never have done, but I left without double checking that the jack, the high lift jack that lives on the front of the car, I didn't check that it was still there, and it wasn't. So when we did accidentally find ourselves a log off the road where I was driving just to check something that I thought I saw that turned out not to be there, we wedged ourselves, and Brian and I were completely stranded for quite a length of time. Well, Brent very kindly rescued me. As you can imagine, it's something that you never live down, but he very kindly offered to give me driving lessons, which is obviously greatly appreciated at this particular time. Now, I did find something to show you, and a quick quiz before it gets too dark to ask you. Found a lot of it there, actually. Okay, let's try and have a look at it. It is a little bit dark already. It is poo. I touched it with my hands, and yet it looks a little bit like predator scat, but I'm touching it with my hands. And if I break it open a little bit, you can see there's strands of grass and roots and all things plant material based. It's about the size of that much of my palm. There you go. So, question for you guys is, what is it? There were a couple of them around, one of which was actually positioned quite high up into a bush, which I actually can't quite work out how that happened. I'm a little bit confused by that one myself, and suitably impressed with the animal concerned. Alrighty, so what is it, everybody? You can send your answers through to #SafariLive on Twitter, or you can email through to questions@wildearth.tv. It's something that I have yet to see whilst I've been here, or at least I've yet to see on a live drive on the Sabi Sands. They are obviously around, given that they're depositing their dung in places. And I have returned to Bushwalk Dam. I'm going to give a quick scan with my spotlight, but I don't think there's anything here, apart from the hippo, who's quite happily in the water. And back again. Doesn't look like there's much hanging around at Bushwalk Dam. Nope. So whatever it was that I saw, and I'm starting to think was in my imagination, somewhat sadly, resulted in a post because I didn't have a jack. By the time the jack did arrive, it took us 2 seconds. All we had to do was jack the front of the car off the log and reverse it. Easy as pie. And that always goes to show how important checking your vehicle as a guide is. Not a mistake I should have made, but I did. And I was very lucky to have a rescue team, even if the rescue team thought it was hilarious and was laughing at me. It's fair enough. Probably was hilarious. And I probably deserved it. There's always a little bit of friendly competition between guides. So moments like that where you do need to call for a rescue operation can be frustrating. But Brian and myself were sitting there watching the sun go down and just thinking, you know, it might be a
Hello everyone.
Whoopsie daisy, and we disappeared there for a moment. Sorry about that. I tried to take the road from Bushwalk that I know has signal, but I think we must have just gone into a little bit of a dip from there. I'm heading on my way towards Cheetah Cutline. Anyway, I was in mid-sentence and it was quite profound, so I'll finish that thought. That although Brian and I were rather stuck and rather stranded, worst places in the world to be stuck. We could have been in a traffic jam in rush hour on our way home through a city. So it definitely wasn't too awful a situation to be in. There was nothing we could do except simply sit and enjoy the beautiful African sunset that we had. All in all, not a disaster and definitely lesson learned. Would have been if the car had been damaged, but it's not. It's absolutely fine. Sometimes these logs just sneak out at you. And if it had been an inch taller or so, we probably would have been absolutely fine. We wouldn't have been able to be beached upon. Oh well. But really good stuff is that we've managed to properly get the bushwalk going this afternoon. And I'm sure that Scott has been having an amazing time showing things that sometimes get passed over and missed when you're on the back of a vehicle. And that's really what walking is all about. To me, it was one of my favorite things to do, take volunteers out because you notice a change, a complete change in the way that they respond to the bush after that. It just gives everybody that opportunity to really get into the smaller things and experience it on a more base level. Some answers to our quiz, and Juana, Raisa and Pinky, you got it absolutely correct. It was indeed a porcupine. And then other answers. Lady Beth, warthog looks a lot like zebra. I'm going to test you on that one next to try and catch you out, which I mentioned I was going to do, so there was almost a trick there. And then in terms of hippo dung, although it scatters, if it's a male, it's usually in balls, and it doesn't look so much like predator scat. That kind of porcupine crew you could almost confuse with a jackal in terms of shape and size. So important to remember that. But obviously if it was jackal feces or jackal scat, then I wouldn't be playing too much with it. The interesting thing that I have noticed is that I don't see many tracks of porcupines walking along the road here, and I'm not quite sure why that is. They must be around, yet I haven't seen them, and I haven't seen any quills dropped yet either. But well done to the regular viewers who got it absolutely correct. The largest rodent in South Africa. And definitely one of my favorites to see. I'm really hoping we get to see one on one of the live drives, especially now that we've changed the times, or we will be changing the times as of tomorrow. So we'll be starting half an hour earlier in the morning and half an hour later in the evening. And that also gives us the opportunity to give those little nocturnal critters an extra chance to pop out. And hopefully amongst them will be a porcupine. And porcupines are amazing creatures, so they mate for life, which is quite unusual in the rodent family. I mean, you don't really see it that much with the smaller rodents that we typically think of. And not only do they mate for life, but they also actively mate once a day, at least once a day, to reaffirm their bond. As you can imagine, it's something that they do very carefully. And there's not a high fertility rate, so they only have about 1 or 2 baby porcupines a year, maybe 2 sets of babies a year, but they still mate every day to reaffirm their bond between them. That being said, they usually forage alone unless you happen to see a mother with babies, and baby porcupines are absolutely adorable. Little miniatures of their parents, complete with fiercely armed quills. It's also interesting to see how, despite those defense mechanisms, it's a beautiful evening. A lot of porcupines do get preyed upon, and as some animals actually specialize in the preying upon porcupines, some leopards even specialize in it, and they have adapted very well to being able to loop around and get to their head rather than being at risk of being rushed by a porcupine with its quills up. But I can imagine it's quite a risky business. You often see lions and leopards, I don't know why, but especially in Kruger, you often see them with quills sticking out of their noses or in their top lips from where they've clearly had an encounter with an angry porcupine or an irate porcupine. Look at that beautiful sky. easternmost border of Djuma. And we're starting to see, now that it's dry again, oops, sorry Steenbroek, didn't mean to catch you right in the eye there. We're starting to see, now that the rains have stopped, we had that first rain that really cleared away all of the dust and the haze, but it's starting to come back again now that we've had these long, hot days. And that's what imparts that incredible red that we see, the reds and the pinks of the sky, because those are the only wavelengths that can get through. The longer wavelengths get through the dust and, in this case, haze. Nice to see that Wendy's driving perfectly straight as always, so no damage done to a steering bar or anything like that. That was my first and major concern. Update that I'm not sure if James has given, which I just heard earlier, is the fact that the Birmingham boys and the Matimbas have had not a clash, but they have encountered each other once again. The Birminghams moved all the way down to Mala Mala sometime this morning or sometime last night even. And there was no physical conflict, but apparently the Matimbas did run away until they'd put about 3 kilometers distance. But they are both on the same property quite far south. In terms of their clashes that they have, or that's happening between the Birmingham boys and the Matimbas, we've seen the effects on the prides with incredibly far-reaching consequences. So to the Nkuhumas, we haven't seen in quite a long time, to the Sticks as well, and then the Salala Pride, who came on to Arathusa 2 days ago for the first time, trying to get away from the Matimba males. And Andrea, you sent an email through asking how many lion prides there are in this area. It's quite a difficult one to answer because they move around a lot. The ones that we generally see in terms of our traverse area, so on Djuma and Arathusa, are the Nkuhuma Pride as well as the Sticks Pride, but the Sticks have got a couple of breakaway groups. So they've split up into, I think, 2 groups, sometimes 3, depending on how they move about. And then there is the Talamati Pride and the Torchwood Pride, who are more off towards the west and the section to the east of me, sorry. Who I've yet to see. Oh, buffalo. Then there's lots of other lion prides that we've seen. So we saw the Salala Pride on Sunday. It's the first time I've seen them, and I think probably going to be the last time we see them for a while. I haven't heard any updates as to where they are now, but I'm sure that they've made a kill somewhere and they are happily feeding. But they're probably going to head back to their points of safety, which is to the south. And then from there, who else is there? There's quite a few. There's the Salati males of the north, a coalition of 2 big males. And then further north into Manyuleti, then there's other prides there as well, in Tinswalu. I don't know the names of all the prides. There's the Castletons off to the south around Londolozi, who I think were connected at some point to the Salala Pride. Lots of... Oh, bug in the eye. There's lots and lots of lions around, but most of them at the moment, because of all of the shenanigans of the Birmingham boys, most of them have disappeared off Djuma for now. They've gone into hiding. Go according to plan, but at least there was no serious damage done, and Brian and I got to spend a lovely afternoon somewhat accidentally enjoying the sunset quite peacefully. I am of course not going to hear the end of it when I get home. There's going to be much to be said about the log that I found, but I'm sure that I can weather that fairly safely without causing too much stress. There's an Ellie off to my right, which is why I'm stopping the car. Hello, big girl. Alright, big girl. She's perfectly relaxed though. She's just watching us in the dark. And definitely a special way to end the evening. I don't want to cause her any distress, so I'm going to sit here and let her choose when she decides to move off. I think I saw a calf behind her as well. It's quite hard to see in the sort of dim light, but I'm going to leave her to finish up whatever she's doing. But yes, as I said, I'm definitely not going to be hearing the end of all of this when I get home tonight. I shall survive, and definitely not a mistake that I will be repeating in the future, especially to leave without a jack. It was definitely a bad idea. Hello, big girl. Maybe just keep an eye on her this way. Not stressed out at all. She's just coming through to us. Oh, there's another Ellie. Oh, we've stumbled into a herd. I'll turn my lights off so that they don't get stressed out. Anyway, so as I was saying, bit of a rough start or a rough end to the afternoon, but still wonderful to be out here. And thank you to all of you, as usual, for all of your questions and your interactions. We love to hear from you. And please let us know if you are a new viewer. We love to take new questions and tell you stuff that maybe our regular viewers sometimes already know, so we take for granted not to say. And a big thank you to Brian for his company during our time stranded and beached on a log. We had a wonderful time. And we will catch up with you tomorrow morning for the sunrise safari. Have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world, and we will see you then. Bye-bye, everybody. Have a great day.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Jiga, where we are just watching the dying embers of the day behind me. I'm silhouetted by the dying embers of the day. Well, not so much silhouetted. I'm not going to talk about that anymore. I'm not making any sense. Right, so a question from Raisa, and Raisa, I think you're in Finland, if I'm not mistaken. You, of course, along with Jeffrey from Texas, pointed out that there is, in fact, a Kigelia africana, or sausage tree, on the reserve, and you were worried that it has flowered. Now, I went past there today. I don't know if you were watching this morning, but it has not flowered. It's only just come into leaf, so I think it should probably flower in about a month's time, so I'll keep you posted on that. Beautiful red flowers that it has, pollinated by bats, as far as I understand it. And then you're also worried that the Scotia brachypetala, or weeping boerbean, has perhaps flowered without your notice. No, I don't believe it has either. That will come shortly. I think probably a little bit sooner than the Kigelia, but probably around about the same time. So don't worry about that, Raisa. You will be okay. You will see the flowers with any luck. Keep watching. And because you have told me that there is, in fact, I've unplugged myself, so I could probably rattle on here until about 9 o'clock. We've got about 2 minutes left, I'm told. So it's very crucial that I have the directress in my ear. Otherwise, I won't know what to do, and I'll become catatonic and just stare blankly at the screen. Right, it's been a marvellous day to be back. I have to tell you while England was very glorious and very wonderful to be in, I have loved every second of the feeling of this hot African day on my skin. And yes, it's been a little sweaty, but that's quite a nice feeling when you've just come out of the cold of England. It's been wonderful to have the sound of the red-chested cuckoo, the first one that I've heard of the season. Just memories came flooding back with its call, and likewise endless memories as we went past a number of the beautiful smells out here of the spring flowers, the hopefully gardenias sometime soon, and then of course the subtleness of the acacias. So that's been really wonderful. A big thank you, of course, to the magnificence that is Jessica and Kirsty in the director's box today. Thank you to Mr. Viam on camera. Thank you, Viam. I'm glad that you've managed to feed yourself with 2 bananas today. That's very important to keep your strength up. And, of course, a big thanks to the Bushwalk team of Brent, Scott and Jandre, and off to the other vehicle where Brian and Jamie held the fort for some parts of the drive. Thank you once again for welcoming me back. It's wonderful to be back in Africa, and thank you all for your time, for your questions and your comments. Mostly your time, of course. A lot of you watch and don't send through comments and questions. We love having you on board, and it's so wonderful that you enjoy Africa as much as we do. We're going to see you tomorrow morning, 5:30. Remember, it's earlier than normal, 5:30 for the dawn safari as another glorious summer day breaks here in magnificent Kruger National Park. Bye-bye. Stay safe and happy wherever you are in the world.